Okie dokes. So, welcome everyone to Building an Apartheid-Free Zone, take two. And we will get started. So, what we're going to cover today is essentially our approach to the AFZ system. And personally, my background is in healthcare, and in healthcare, we love our systems because they're going to do three main things for you. They ensure that you collect all of the data that you need. They ensure that no interventions are missed or opportunities for interventions are missed. And they also reduce clinician fatigue. And so the same thing applies to activism as well. So having this system for AFZ is going to do those three things for us here as well. It's going to make sure that we get all the data that we need. So what businesses are amenable, what businesses should we avoid, what businesses are going to be wasting our time, but also when we do find an amenable business, that they don't fall between the cracks and they don't get lost to, barriers to entry. And also by having a system, we all know that our capacity is limited. And so having a system is going to ensure that we are as efficient as possible and we can make the most out of the activists that we have on board. So today we're going to go through a brief review of BDS and AFZ. We all know what they are, but they're topics that we're going to be talking a lot about with businesses. So it's important that we're all singing off the same hymn sheet and we're comfortable with that information. We'll go through the AFC pack, so all of the different resources that are in that and how to use them. We will go through our low-hanging watermelons, or those businesses that we identify as easy to approach. We'll go through exactly how to approach businesses and sign them up. We'll touch on things that we have found very helpful at improving our success rates. And then we will touch on kind of our new initiatives and things that we've started to try and just keep efficiency going and keep the momentum moving. And then we'll share some of your successes and we'll end with a Q&A. So if there's anything that you feel hasn't been fully answered or anything you want extra clarification on, we'll touch on that then as well. So I'm going to bring Neil in and he's going to talk us through BDS and AFZ.
Excellent. Thanks, Miriam. Obviously, I'm sure as we're all Palestine activists, we're very familiar with BDS, but it's good to take a moment anyway just to refresh on what BDS is. So BDS is Boycott, Divestment and Sanctions. It's a Palestinian-led organization that is anti-racist and aims to win freedom for the Palestinians through pressure on the Israeli state and their enablers, and they believe, like all of us do as well, that Palestinians should be entitled to the same rights as everybody else, basically. You can flip the slide, Mariam. The three demands that they have are ending the occupation, recognizing the rights of Palestinian Israeli citizens to full rights and full equality, the same as Jewish Israeli citizens, and respecting the right of return for Palestinian refugees. So there's obviously the three elements: boycott, divestment, and sanctions. Boycott is probably the most relevant to apartheid-free zones and what we're going to be talking about today. And it involves withdrawing support from the Israelis' apartheid regime, as well as the complicit international companies and organizations that enable it. Then we have the divestment, and that really relates to divesting from Israeli institutions. So that will be more around, investments, in pension funds, universities, maybe local councils, banks, to urge them and pressure them to divest from Israel. And again, also from Israel's enabling international companies as well. And then finally, we have the sanctions element, and that really, kind of involves, pressuring governments to sanction Israel, and really, I suppose, governments to live up to their commitments to international law and human rights, which is what they should be doing in sanctioning Israel anyway. And I think there's a lot of pertinent examples of efforts to do that at the moment. We're all witnessing it now in Ireland, obviously, in the Dáil, and as well, with the stop the game and stuff like that. So a lot of what's going on, even outside of AFZ and outside of like very specific BDS actions, kind of falls into these areas anyway. So it's good to see. You can flip it over, Miriam. So these are the boycott targets. Again, we're probably all very familiar with these. There's a couple of key points I want to touch on while we're looking at these targets. Actually, we were very lucky to have a visit from Omar Barghouti, who is one of the Palestinian founders of BDS last year. So we were able to kind of talk through some of the ideas behind how these targets are, chosen, and the different treatments that different groupings of them should get. So I think an important point is just to consider the focused targeting. So these are obviously, they're not a huge selection of businesses, and there's a very important reason for that, and it is ultimately to try and make the targeting of the particular businesses as effective as possible. You'll often see these these pictures on people's social media and on the internet where you've got 100 different businesses that are complicit, and there are literally hundreds of businesses that are complicit in the Israelis' crimes against the Palestinians. And I think that's just a function of capitalism, how these multinational businesses work. But the problem with trying to target all of the complicit businesses regardless is that you get boycott fatigue. So it becomes too difficult for consumers or people to even keep track of who they should be boycotting. You get people who are saying, oh, well, I'm boycotting all of these guys, so I'm going to have a Coke or a McDonald's today and give myself a treat. And what it ends up is, it becomes it dilutes the boycott by reducing the amount that each of the targets actually gets impacted. So by having focused a small group of focused complicit companies that we target, it ensures that it's a lot easier for individuals to actually keep in mind, I absolutely need to target these. So the message is really to target these, really boycott these, and that way they will actually start to feel the pain and start to change their behavior. And we can see that as well in the apps. So the likes of Boycat, that has kind of different levels or different tiers of boycotting. So the top tier is these focused targets, but then you can set it at different levels and for different tiers, and that will broaden the list of targets. And that's really for people who, maybe activists like us who really want to boycott intensively, or don't want to have any sort of interaction or any support at all with for the Israeli regime. But for when we're working with consumers that aren't necessarily activists or businesses that aren't activists, then it's really important that we focus on these focused targeting BDS targets. The other thing I want to touch on is the three different groupings for the targets themselves. So we've got your priority boycott targets, we've got our pressure targets, and we've got our organic targets that are supported by the BDS. And these are kind of represent, I suppose, there's three different kind of ways of thinking about these. So the priority targets, those are the ones that the BDS organization themselves target because of their high levels of complicity, and because they also think that there's a, they can actually influence their decisions and actually cause enough pain to these businesses that they can change course and cause pain and pressure to Israel. The pressure targets themselves. So sorry, just a point on the priority targets. They're, the call from BDS is to have a complete boycott of those. So absolutely no business to those, and that would apply to both consumers and to businesses in AFZs as well. Then the pressure targets are slightly different. So the BDS movement actively calls for pressure campaigns against these targets. So that would include boycotts when reasonable alternatives exist, as well as disruption, social media pressure, lobbying, strategic litigation. And you kind of notice there's a slight difference. They don't call for the full boycott. They say a boycott when alternatives exist. And that's kind of a recognition that some of these targets are, the likes of Google, for instance, is almost impossible for a lot of people to boycott. And then you have the organic boycotts supported by BDS movement. And those are really boycotts that haven't been called for by the BDS movement, but have just originated in various countries organically by other grassroots movement, and it is based on these companies' complicity. And while the BDS movement don't consider them priority targets, they do support those boycotts. So they encourage people again to boycott those where alternatives exist. There is a slight nuance with apartheid-free zones as well, relating to the organic boycotts, and it's quite similar to the pressure targets. The BDS committee, the national committee, they ask for the organic targets to be boycotted where possible, and within the constraints of the business. And that, I think that recognizes that, again, for instance, Coca-Cola is such a ubiquitous brand that most people expect that if they go into a restaurant, a cafe, or a pub, that Coca-Cola will be there. So I think that's a recognition of those types of challenges, from the BDS National Committee to that, for businesses and individuals to try and put pressure where possible, even if a complete boycott of a particular brand is not possible. Before we move on, we've covered quite a bit there. So Adam, I don't know if there's any questions in the chat there that we want to call out, or are we good to? I don't think I see any.
We all good?
I think we're good. Let's keep going. Right. So what is an apartheid-free zone? So apartheid-free zone is one of the initiatives of the BDS movement, and it's essentially the idea is to create, a network of spaces around the world that are in solidarity with the people of Palestine, that are free of Israel's genocide and apartheid and settler colonialism, and which bring together multiple struggles for justice and equality. So really places of social justice and really solidarity that spreads beyond the Palestinian question. So that's the kind of the idea behind those. If you want to flip to the next slide, Miriam. So, and again, this is just a graphic from our own content, the flyers that we hand out to businesses, just to illustrate how, if a business is supporting one of those BDS targets, that ultimately finances Israel and the genocide and apartheid. So the idea is for them to cut that link so that they stop over time funding the genocide and apartheid. Okay, so the AFZ journey, it's a 3-step journey. Starts with the declaration, and then the action, and then the third step is really cementing that solidarity. I'll go into a little more detail on the next slide. So the commitment to becoming an AFZ involves publicly declaring it. So that's really, kind of signing up to the initiative, displaying the signs or the stickers or whatever else, ensuring, by signing up then that you're appearing on the map so that people can find you. So it's really a public declaration of solidarity and support. The second step then is to take action to become an apartheid-free zone. So that would really be, I suppose, the point at which businesses would be kind of surveying and looking at their supply chain, checking where they are exposed, checking how they can kind of potentially replace products or what products they need to replace, and what's the strategy for that. And then finally, the third point is to continue the journey of justice, so to stand in solidarity with wider social justice movements. And that really, I suppose, again, kind of thinking back to what the definition is, the idea is to create these spaces that are then, safe spaces for people who want to kind of stand in solidarity with oppressed peoples around the world of all types. Okay, and there's multiple types of AFZs, academic and cultural. So, universities, cultural organizations, promoters would be an example. Local businesses is really what we're kind of focused on here with apartheid-free zones. But obviously then there's sports clubs can do it. Obviously there's pressure on, there's pressure on the the FAI at the moment to stop the game. There's pressure on the GAA with aliens. And then social clubs is another one, local government. So Cork City Council, for instance, has declared itself to be an apartheid-free zone. And then there's trade unions as well. And there's been declarations of support as well from trade unions in Ireland so far.
Okay, jokes. Thanks a million. Any questions there, Adam, or will I continue on?
There was one in the chat, but I think I answered it and Rona put in a link.
Brilliant. Fabulous. Okay, we will carry on. So the pack, this is what we are going to be sending everyone. So everyone will be getting soft copies of these. I'll email it to the list of people that have signed up today. So if you've received a Zoom link, you will receive this as well. And what we need is the pack. We also need a WhatsApp group and a spreadsheet. So if it's just you and a friend, you probably don't need anything fancy. But if your group is getting bigger, so like the one in Cork, there's quite a few of us involved. And so we need to be able to communicate, and we need to be able to kind of write things down so that we're not, going to the same business twice and things like that. So what's in the pack? So this is our spreadsheet. So in it, we're going to say, you can see down here, for example, we've got the different tabs for the different areas. Like my focus was the halal food shops, and then we have the marina market in Cork, we've restaurants, we've cafes. You don't have to approach all of this. We're here now because we've been doing this for a while, but yours is going to be really simple. You're going to have one tab open, whatever it is that you start with, and you're only going to add to it as momentum grows. This spreadsheet does not have to be hugely detailed. It needs to be as detailed as you need it to be. So like I said, we're going to send you a template of this. You can, like I said, use it exactly as it is, or you can make it more simple if there's only a couple of you and you can talk to each other. There's less importance or less worry that things are going to fall between the cracks in that regard. And then the actual kind of physical things that you're going to have in your pack are going to be an information leaflet, alternative sheets, the BDS little wallet cards, these little dudes, they're nice and small. I don't know, I actually don't know if you can see me or not, or can you just see my screen?
We can see it.
No, you can see it. Brilliant. Fabulous. Well,
everyone else
it's this size, or like those influencers with my hand. Okay.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So, and then the sign up sheet, and finally the poster. So We'll get started. So this is the information leaflet. We put this together in, I suppose, collaboration with businesses. We showed them kind of our drafts, and they had a read through it, and they kind of let us know what was clear, what wasn't clear. So this has been written with businesses in mind. It uses language like you, which is empowering. We're not saying we do this, we do that. It's all about what they can do. It outlines, as you can see here, exactly what the steps are that they need to take. It mentions the boycott app. And then, like Neil said, there's different tiers within that app. So when you're going around to businesses, you can, bring attention to that and let them know, yeah, just use tier 1. That's all that's expected of you for apartheid free zones. Then we've got our details here. And obviously all of the things that we're going to link to you will not have our information. So that area, wherever it says, CPSC, that's going to be blank. So you could put your own details in there. So it just explains basically what an AFZ is, how to become an AFZ, and you can leave that then with the manager. It's something for them to look at if they're busy when you call over to them. And again, like I said, with the app, you're going to be reminding them that it's the priority targets is what it is that we're looking for. We have the Coca-Cola alternative sheet. So the reason why we have a specific one for Coca-Cola is because it's one of our main targets is cafes and pubs. And this is such a common thing that comes up. And one of the feedback that we've received from businesses is they need to have a steady supply chain of whatever it is that they're serving. So they can't just have one person that they're getting things from, because if that person has any delays, then they don't have a supply, and that's not how a business works. So we've put a lot of work into this and updated this alternative sheet quite a bit since the last webinar that we've done. And so now you can see that we've got quite a few different alternative stockists for them, and we've spelled it out in black and white what is a replacement for what. And then you can see here in bold is who is going to supply that specific alternative. Another concern previously was that Palestine Cola did not have the recycle logo on it. They now do. So that's no longer a worry. So this is, again, all about reducing barriers to entry and making things as seamless and easy for the business as possible, because this is a question that they will be asking you. So if you're going to a business, they ask you a question and you haven't an answer for them, it doesn't look very, very well. Whereas if they're like, well, who am I supposed to get this stuff from? And you're like, funny you should ask that, here you go. Then it makes life a lot easier, and it's much easier to convince them that this is something that is doable for them. We have a general alternatives sheet, and this goes into all of the other companies and businesses that are within the priority list. This document is always going to be a live document, in the sense that you're always going to have to update it. So with the priority targets, they're not stagnant. So some will be removed over time if the BDS campaign feels that what they wanted to achieve has been achieved, and other companies will be added in. So this, to my knowledge right now, is up to date. But if we're having another meeting in 8-10 months time, this document might look different. Another thing also to keep in mind is that the alternatives to the complicit companies might also change if new information is discovered about them. And the way that I created this document is that just literally online searched for alternatives to whatever it was that I was looking at, and then did a deep dive on each of those companies through the boycott app, through the other boycotting apps, because sometimes, some apps will have blind spots. So it's good to check more than one when you're putting information together like this. And then I also went and checked the parent companies. I went and checked Francesca Albanese's report to see if there's any complicity or if these companies have been flagged anywhere. So, there's only so much you can do, but it's important for something that's, you know, I suppose this critical to do your due diligence and make sure that you're not suggesting a company that is that's also complicit, you know, replacing something bad with something maybe not necessarily worse, but not as good. And then, oh yes, another thing, make sure when you're looking at the apps, and this is just for your own knowledge as well, that a lot of the apps are very much US centered. So, for example, one issue we found in the Boycott app, sorry, was that it flagged Club Orange, which is an Irish drink, as complicit because it confused it with the US brand Club, which is a subsidiary of Kellogg's. So it's important to not just look at the app kind of saying, no, this is complicit. You will also want to read why it's complicit, because that's how you realize if there's anything incorrect. So just keep an eye on that. They have changed it as far as I'm aware, because I did email them. But just keep an eye out and just double check things every once in a while, especially if it's for something that you're going to be going to a business to talk about. And then these are the little cards that I was talking about. So this again has been updated since the last webinar because Tiva used to be here, it's now there. Xbox as well, I think, was added since the last time. And the other change, I think, is Zara as well. Wasn't there before and now is there. And the change that we've done, so we also have so this is the front, this is the back. It is, if you can still see me, it's just this size. It's the size of like a credit card or something, so it can fit into your wallet. We found people really like these. We use them in our BDS stalls, and we find that people will accept this a lot easier than they accept a leaflet. And it started some really, really good conversations. And it's a great little reference card for people. Another great thing with these cards is that if you're unsure about approaching a business, you're not sure, is this going to be, you know, an easy business to approach for the AFZ or not, what you can do is come up to them and be like, hi, how are you? I'm from the BDS campaign in Cork. We're trying to just raise awareness about complicit companies. We have this little card. Would you mind displaying it? And if they're like, yeah, absolutely, no bother, then you're kind of like, okay, that's a business that I would feel more confident approaching regarding AFZ. Whereas if they're like, you know, aggressive or like, no, whatever, and they won't give you the time of day, then maybe you don't want to be wasting your time with them at this. You know, you might circle back in a while when you have more capacity, but if you're limited in capacity, you may not want to be, you know, donating your time to a business that's kind of that close-minded. So what we have on the back of them, so like I said, this is the front, this is the back. We have a QR code that will take them to the official BDS campaign website. And we've also got our details here, so where they can find us online, how they can contact us, and a QR code to our website. And again, in the ones that we provide for you, this section here will be blank, so you can put your own details in whichever format suits. So that's the BDS card. I'm just going to check I'm not forgetting anything to mention there. Oh yes, actually, I forgot to mention, when we were looking at the alternative, just to circle back to the alternative sheet, when we were looking at, because this was asked at the last webinar, I remember, when we were looking at what alternatives to recommend, when you're looking them up, there is a difference between a complicit company, especially when it comes to Coca-Cola, a complicit company, a company that just shares a bottling plant. So there will be a lot of Irish drinks that share a bottling plant with Coca-Cola, but they're not Coke, you know, so that doesn't make them complicit. Now, if that bottling plant is in an occupied territories of Palestine, that's a separate issue. But if it's a bottling plant, let's say in Dublin, then you don't need to worry about that. That doesn't make them a complicit company. And then this is, I think, arguably one of the most important parts of the AFZ pack. So this is the sign-up form. So if you were to go onto the AFZ website, this is all of the information that they would ask for a business to be signed up. And so this is a printed out version essentially of the website. And the reason why it's so important is because the biggest way that we were losing businesses was you would go to them, you would talk to them, they'd be on board and you'd say, okay, so just, scan this QR code or go to apartheidfree.ie and sign up, and then radio silence, because it's a business, they're busy, things happen, staff call in sick, they forget. And so we were losing people to that. So by removing that barrier of entry, by getting the details from them, so as soon as the business says, do you know what, yes, I do want to sign up to this, you're like, brilliant, give me your details. And then we do the admin for them. They're signed up, that's it. They can't, there's no excuse for them. There's nothing stopping them, because we've gotten rid of that bit of admin, that bit of kind of the boring stuff, essentially. And we have a record as well of, who's in the AFZ in Cork, because we have a stack of these forms. Excuse me. Just to point out as well, when you have these signed up, you want to sign the bottom bit there where it says permission to advertise on social media, just for GDPR reasons. If they're happy to be, on your Instagram, just make sure that box is ticked, so that you've got all your bases covered. You don't have to use the kind of admin only section as well. We have it there for use if we're handing the actual hard copy to our admin person, Soph. But if it's being sent as a photo, then obviously you don't have to print it out, just so that you can tick those boxes. That's what the spreadsheet is for. And then this is the our version of the poster. This is not the official one, just to point out. Businesses will get an official AFZ pack once they're signed up, but this is for that immediate, well done, you're on the right side of history moment. So when they say, yes, we want to sign up, you say, brilliant, happy days. You give them this poster. It's printed on like nice thick paper, and you get a photo with them. We have sometimes had to go back, especially, we were talking at the start about how abysmal the weather has been. If it's, lashing and it looks really bad, then you might want to come back on a day, or if you went at the end of day and it was like really dark outside, you might want to circle back and take a photo when it's nice and bright and sunny. But you take a photo outside the shop with this poster and the business owner or one of the staff, and then you share it on your social media. They can have this then up on their window or behind their register. And then when they get the official one from the AFC, they can take this down, or they can have both, doesn't matter. It's just so that, there's something there. It's got nice affirmative language in it. It's very bright. It's in your face. You can't miss it. And it's good as well it's a talking point for people coming. And I think people, consumers are becoming more aware of the links of these kind of things and trying to be more mindful of where they spend their money. So, it's always good to highlight a business that has made this decision, so that people that care about that know that this is a business that also cares about Palestine. And, just to go back there, there is the QR code there will take them to the AFZ website as well. And I'm going to bring Neil back for the low-hanging watermelons, unless there's any questions, Adam.
Yes, and Bernie
Yes.
is wondering if there's any Northern Ireland stockists, or are they like all like nationwide, island-wide?
Let me just go back to that, actually, 2 seconds, and just look at where they are. Leave that with me. I'll double check. I'm pretty sure Four Corners has a rep for that would serve up there. But yeah, leave that with me and I'll get back to you. Anything else? Any other questions? No?
So I just wanted to dive in very quickly onto the question, Sandra, that you brought up around, the whether or not the priority targets don't necessarily or whether, whether the priority targets are the only ones that are necessary in order to declare yourself an AFZ or not, whether businesses have to include the organic targets or the pressure targets. And it's one I wanted to kind of discuss for a minute, because it took me quite a while to get my head around, and it caused us a lot of confusion initially. And the guidance from the BDS National Committee around the organic targets is that it needs to be contextualized and taken according to the reasonable capacity of the apartheid-free zone, which ultimately, ultimately means that if it's possible, for the apartheid-free zone to do it, where they're able to do it, then they should do it, but it's not a hard requirement, right? And so Coca-Cola is a good example, right? I mentioned that a few minutes ago. It is, everyone expects to have Coke. There's so many businesses that have said to me, I can't get rid of Coke. It's one of my top sellers. People come in here and they buy a burger and a Coke, or a pizza and a Coke. Everyone does. So I think the answer there is, I would say that they should try and see how far they can go. For instance, stock an alternative alongside a Coke, so that people, people go in, and because it's an apartheid-free zone, and want to have an apartheid-free meal, can actually get a Palestine cola, for instance. But then those people who absolutely will only settle for Coke still have that option, so that they're not damaging their business, right? Because I suppose, if we insist we're going to lose opportunities for businesses to become apartheid-free zones, where they would be prepared to do, all of the priority targets, but maybe not go fully in on, for instance, Coca-Cola. Another example is, I think we had one come up on the national AFZ chat, where there was a business that had a shop and they wanted to do apartheid-free zones with it, but they also had an apartment above the shop, and they used Airbnb. And Airbnb is, there's no real equivalent to Airbnb that you can go to do the same kind of business. So, the alternative there is for the customer to try and reduce their exposure as much as possible to Airbnb, while also looking at the other elements that they can definitely do. So hopefully that answers that. Is it clear, Sandra?
Hi, thank you so much. No, that's really helpful. We've actually been coming across the barrier of Google more than Coca-Cola for businesses, because they use Google to promote their business, Google Ads, etc. So, yeah. So if we're putting it to them that, the priority targets and the top tier are the key ones that they need to fully boycott from, and then to do their best with regard to the pressure and the organic, I think that is more supportive, particularly of businesses that are dependent on Google.
Yeah, I fully agree, Sandra. The mental model I would use is that, you're not helping anyone if you damage your business or you put yourself out of business trying to do this thing, right? So, you need to, you're better off to stay in an apartheid-free zone that is actually in business and doing what you can, and keep trying to see what other ways you can, you can increase your solidarity as well.
Brilliant. Yeah. Thanks so much for that.
No problem. Thanks very much, Sandra. And there was another question I saw pop up around whether or not aliens, or why aliens is not on any of the BDS target lists. I don't know the answer to that one, actually. I've never come across it. I don't know if anyone else here is or has that info.
I think aliens, the reason why we're within Ireland and stuff, we're focused on it is because it's been flagged by other reports. But I think the BDS campaign is focusing on AXA currently. Now, whether that's going to change in the future, it's very much watch this space, because like we saw with TIVA, for example, it was a pressure target. Now it's a priority. Allianz may very well find itself there, but I think AXA was a lot more complicit, which is why they've chosen that one instead.
Cool. Thanks, Miriam.
Okay.
Mary mentioned that their home to go is an equivalent to Airbnb, which is good. So that's a good one to know. Mary, I suspect it's kind of one of those where maybe businesses would have to start using both, and like hopefully over time reduce their exposure to Airbnb, and then DuckDuckGo, yeah, is a good search engine. I use that myself.
Same.
Yeah.
Can I actually, I just had a thought. A lot of the times with businesses, exactly like you said, Neil, like if it's going to harm them, then obviously that's something that they don't have to participate in. But you can always encourage them personally, for example, they can step away in their own kind of personal dealings from Google. Whereas if they have to use it for their business, they're using it for their business. It's not going to stop them from being an AFZ. But in areas that they can, maybe not use Google when they're searching things, or maybe when they're looking for a hotel, not to use booking.com and things like that. That would be the impact that they can have within their kind of circle of influence. But yeah, absolutely not to let it hinder them from taking the steps that they can take as a business.
Good stuff. And some other good alternatives being suggested there. Podbean for podcasts, Airbnb for as an alternative to Airbnb from Faith. Every time I've checked that Airbnb in the last few months, it's down for maintenance due to DOS attacks. I just checked it there now; it's still down. So perhaps that's Airbnb or Zionists attacking it. I don't know. And Joe, you had a question there. When a business signs up to the AFZ, what information and support do they get in terms of updates from the AFZ centrally? So I know that once they sign up, they do get information. They get information by a post afterwards, which has details for how they should go about assessing their supply chains for complicit products and Israeli products, and how they should address that. So that gets sent out within a week or two after they sign up. Cool. So I think that's all outstanding questions addressed, but please keep them coming, and we'll break for more questions in a few minutes. So let's talk about low-hanging watermelons, or basically how we approach businesses, or how we've been doing in Cork. So we've kind of looked at dividing things into achievable zones, and how we approach addressing those. So there's a couple of different approaches. You can take a location-based approach, and we've used these approaches ourselves in different instances. So you could take a location-based approach where you just select a single street or an area or a market, and you just go and you hit every business in that location, and then move on to the next street. You can go with a type-based approach where you just say, I'm going to do pubs, and we're going to do all of these pubs and get as much of those done as possible. And once we've spoken to all those and either, signed them up or ruled them out or whatever, we move on to restaurants or hairdressers or, bookshops. That's another option. Or we can go after low-hanging fruit, or low-hanging watermelons, as we like to say, where we can see that there's businesses who are displaying solidarity. Maybe they have flags outside the businesses, or maybe they frequently allow posters for our events to be hung up, or we see their owners at the marches. So those are three different types. They each have their own kind of pros and cons, or their own benefits. So location is, I find location can be good because sometimes it throws up wins that you didn't know you were going to get, or even business types that maybe you didn't you wouldn't have even thought of if you were going through and looking at cafes, pubs, and restaurants. So if you go on a location based area, you might come across a laundrette or something like that, and maybe you never would have thought about targeting those, but then they might be an ally and they might sign up. So I think that's one of the great benefits of location. For types, I think one of the good benefits is that you kind of get into a groove of having pretty similar conversations over and over again, or the same conversations. So you're learning little bit about the industry, and you're seeing some of the challenges that come up, and you can kind of be prepared for those. It also works really well, maybe if you have a bit of knowledge about it yourself. Maybe you've worked in a pharmacy for a few years, so you might say, I'm going to target pharmacies, or maybe you've worked in pubs around, and maybe people working in pubs, and that can be to your advantage. So and then obviously low hanging, it has the benefit of high success rate, or hopefully high likelihood of success rate. So yeah, if you want to pop to the next slide there. And so here is we can see a contrast of where we were and where we've come in the last 6 months, really. So if you looked at the first slide, we had 72, I think, in Cork. So we now have 125 in the last 6 months. So that's good. Some of those are ones that we've signed up. Some are ones that businesses found out about the initiative and said, actually, I want to do that. I'm discussing what's happening. I want to do my part. So, and that's kind of what we're trying to get to, is building this to the point that it takes on its own momentum, and we have more and more people going, well, I'm only going to eat in apartheid-free zones, or drink in apartheid-free zones, or do whatever, but also businesses saying, oh yeah, I want to be part of that. I want to be in on this. If you want to pop to the next one. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about approaching businesses. So when you're approaching businesses, when you're approaching a business, you want to prepare. You want to kind of think about the type of business you're approaching and what that might entail, maybe what some of the queries or questions they might have, or what are the brands that they might be most exposed to. You want to have a pitch ready. So, maybe a little script, think about what you're going to say. And then you want to think about, when is the best time for you to come in? When is the business kind of decision maker, the owner or manager, most likely to be there and available? And that'll depend on the business. And also, you don't want to be popping in and saying, the middle of the day to a busy cafe when they're serving lunch, for instance. So you just need to consider that. When you're, going on the visit, then just have your pack ready. Make sure you speak to the manager or owner. If they're not present, you're always going to need to speak to them, really, to actually seal the deal or get a definitive answer. Those are the two outcomes you really want. Obviously, sealing the deal is the one you really want, getting them to sign up as an apartheid-free zone. But at least if you try and pitch it and they say, no, we're not interested, at least then you can cross them off the list, and you don't have to come in 2 or 3 more times and kind of spend your energy chasing, and then you can go and look at other businesses. So that's really what you're after. And you're only ever going to get that from the manager or owner and from speaking to them directly. So if they're not there on the day, I think there's 3 options that we try. We'll ask, how can we contact them? Is there an email or phone number that we can get? We found that businesses are happy enough to give out emails, but they're very rarely answered, and it's a lot more difficult to get phone numbers, but it's worth a try. Another option is, when will they be in? Will they be in tomorrow? Can I call back? Or, find a time when you're available that they'll be available for you to speak to. And then the other option you have is maybe have a quick chat to a staff member, leave in the information, leave your leaflet, maybe write your name and number on the leaflet and leave that into them. But that's really just a step to trying to get to speak to the manager or the owner directly. because you know you're going to need to do that anyway. So it's just trying to get to make that meeting happen. If the manager or owner is present, be respectful, introduce yourself, introduce your group, then introduce the apartheid-free zones concept, and then you want to go into what it means in practice. So that's kind of the first thing, that once you've introduced it and they understand where you're coming from, they're going to want to say, well, what does that mean for me? So you want to explain that it's a journey. It will take some time, and what it means, and then use your materials and kind of refer to those. And I would usually kind of go through one or two examples of the brands that they most likely are, you know, exposed to, you know, or, you know, the types of products as well that they might be exposed to. So for instance, a restaurant, you know, fruit and vegetables are one of the big exports from Israel that may, you know, work their way into supply chains here. So just alerting them to business, to what that means. So once you have success, you want to fill out the form, or get the business owner to fill out the form. Then you want to give them the poster, and ask for the picture holding the poster in front of the premises for us to post on social media. That's a little kind of benefit for them as well. They get a little bit of publicity out of it. And then we like to leave boycott materials, like our boycott cards, in a prominent location. If they're, you know, if they're allies to the point that they're prepared to actually become an apartheid-free zone, I find that most businesses then will be happy to kind of hold materials that customers can help themselves to. And that means that people are actually sort of self-serving BDS information to themselves, and it's kind of multiplying the I suppose the BDS concept. Okay, so let's look at some common challenges. Time is obviously a common challenge. Businesses are, you know, they're busy. It's in the name. So they've, you know, they're always, their time is very precious to them. They're always kind of probably busy trying to make sure their business is going well. So that's why we take the time to come and meet them where they are, and you know, we prepare a lot ourselves so that when we're talking to them, you know, everything is really clear and we've got the materials there from them, and try and make it as much as possible the process of actually signing up to be as painless as possible for them. Capacity is, I suppose, our capacity is definitely a challenge. So managing that is important. But if you can manage it, you know, if some ways you can help is like knowing a little more about maybe some of the alternatives, such as the prices and stuff like that, so you can actually even go a little bit deeper about what it would mean to the business if they were to, for instance, if they were to try stock some Palestine cola, something like that. And then the next one is the all or nothing approach, and that really kind of harks back to Sandra's question. You know, businesses might, you know, and that's not only Sandra's question, but also the issue of like the likes of Airbnb and stuff like that. So businesses might feel that, you know, they have to be 100% AFZ, they have to divest from everything and they have to do it now. And a lot of businesses, we sometimes hear feedback from businesses that they're not, you know, they won't be able to do it for, you know, 10 months because of a contract, and they don't feel right, or don't feel comfortable, you know, announcing it at that point. So it's just really important that to stress that it's a journey, right? That it starts with making the commitment, but then it's a journey about, you know, learning more about it, assessing your supply chains, and taking those steps. But as long as they're committed and they want to do it, then that shouldn't prevent them from signing up and starting the journey of becoming an AFZ.
Thank you, Neil. Ask and you shall receive. One of the questions that we got in the feedback from the first webinar was people wanted to see, what does it sound like when you approach a business? What questions are you going to get? And so Neil and Adam have very graciously agreed to give us a mock interaction between the business. Is it okay, lads, if I keep it on this? Because I'm afraid if I go out of screen share, my lack of Zoom skills may become apparent to everyone.
Miriam, this is my starring role. Like, no, that's not. Okay.
Your
I
Oscars
guess.
almost. I can try.
No, I don't.
Are you sure? You don't want people to stare at you?
That's no problem. That's no problem at all.
I think people can see you though. I think I'm the only one that won't see this.
Okay, but we can watch the video.
I'll imagine it in my head.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent stuff. Alrighty. So, Adam, you good to go?
All good.
Excellent stuff. Alrighty. So I'm going to be the activist. Adam's going to be the business person, and we'll just walk through a very quick kind of role play of what I would be saying to a business person when I'm going in to pitch apartheid-free zones. So, hi, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. And you?
Oh, I'm great, thanks. I was hoping to speak to the owner or manager of this business. Would that be you?
Yes, I'm the owner. How can I help?
Oh, great. Well, my name is Neil. I'm actually here as a representative of the Cork Palestine Solidarity Campaign. We're actually currently working on an initiative in which we're partnering with Cork businesses to support them in becoming an apartheid-free zone. Have you ever heard of an apartheid-free zone?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so an apartheid-free zone is any business or club or organization, really any space that commits to being a space of solidarity with the Palestinian people and of being free of Israeli apartheid and human rights abuses. And they would do that by ensuring that there are no Israeli products or services in their supply chain, and also by removing products or services from multinational companies that profit from Israeli human rights abuses.
What companies are they?
So at this point, I'm going to have handed Adam the leaflet, and now I'm going to hand him the BDS card. So these are the companies. These are boycott targets of the Palestinian-led boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. You'll probably recognize a lot of them. And the goal really for the AFZ, the apartheid-free zone, would be to completely eliminate your use of any Israeli products or services and any of the priority targets that you see on this card, and then try as much as possible to reduce or eliminate your use for the pressure targets and also of the organic targets, if possible.
Yeah, I'd love to do something here, but getting rid of Coke would be a big problem for me. It's one of my top selling items. I'd probably go out of business if I didn't sell Coke.
I understand. So Coke, actually, it's a funny one. One of the reasons it's targeted is that it operates facilities in the illegally occupied West Bank. But as I said, it's an organic target. So the goal really would be to try and limit your use as much as possible. And then even as a step towards eliminating it, if it's possible for you. Ultimately, no one expects you to harm your business or lose customers. So what I would recommend is maybe try looking at stocking an alternative. We have a list of alternative products for Coca-Cola here, and there are details for their distributors in Ireland as well. And at this point, I'm handing the person the Coca-Cola alternatives page. I generally recommend Palestine Cola because it was set up specifically to provide customers with an alternative to Coke. And the manufacturer also donates their profits to charity. So, I mean, ultimately, if you stock that, and when someone orders a Coke, and you could even say, oh, we have this alternative, and the manufacturer's profits go to charities, to Palestinian charities, but we also have Coke if you prefer. That way you'd be doing your best to try and limit your use, but then you still have Coke in stock for those customers that insist, so that you're not losing customers who really want that.
That could work. I'll need some time to look into it.
Yeah, of course. How about if I come back this day next week?
Maybe the week after would work better.
Sure, I'll do that. Look, in the meantime, I'll write down my contact details. So you'll have my email address, my phone number. Feel free to call, text, or email me at all if you have any questions. I'll be really happy to kind of help out however I can. And cut.
Oscar-winning performance.
Thank
Brilliant.
you.
I loved it. It's
I
do you know, I love that it brings it all together, you know, because I know we've talked about everything separately, but I think it really summarizes everything when you kind of just see it all in the one. So thanks a million. That was fab. I'm gonna
No problem.
move along. There we go. So after that excellent chat that you've had with the business, they call you back and they say, absolutely, I want to sign up to be an AFZ. So what does that look like? What does that entail? So yeah, just be aware that it will often take multiple visits because, you know, maybe the first time you come, the business is busy, maybe they've never heard about this, so they need time to process and kind of read the materials that you've given them and see how it could work for them. So don't be kind of put off if someone says, look, you know, can you come back or let me think about this? Don't think that that's automatically going to mean no. And then once a business agrees to sign up, that's when you sign up that form that we showed you, the sign up form, the physical form. You get all their details there, make sure everything is included, and make sure that you don't forget to sign the social media box at the bottom. And then, yeah, like I said before, one of the benefits of the form is that we know who's signed up and who hasn't, because we don't have direct access to the database. So if they've signed up on the form, you know that, and you're going to be signing them up for them. And this form has been one of the huge kind of boosters of our success, because it gets rid of that barrier, that admin barrier that a lot of kind of businesses have stumbled on. And another thing is that you're never then annoying to the business because you're not chasing them up, you know. So once they say yes, you get their details and that's it, it's done. And so, like we said before, with the poster, you hand them the poster, they fill out the form, you hand them the poster, the photo is taken depending on the weather and the time of day, and then they get to keep that poster for display purposes. And then, provided that they've signed the social or ticked that social media box, that photo is then put onto social media advertising their AFZ status. So it's a bit of advertising for them as well. And so once they've signed the form, then the registering is the admin stuff that we handle. So the person who makes the visit will send the form either as a hard copy, so physically hand it in to the admin person, or take a photo of it and share it with the admin person. So like I said, depending on your capacity and the size of your group, that might be just you and a friend, or if you've got a larger group, we would recommend having a set admin person, just to ensure that nothing falls between the cracks. And so the admin person will take that form, they'll sign them up on the AFZ website, they'll ensure that the spreadsheet has been updated where you're tracking all of your businesses, and they'll save the photo of the form or the hard copy of the form for your own admin and future reference. And the once everything has kind of been confirmed, then the spreadsheet is updated one final time. And I've put together a little video there just to show you what it looks like. So you look up apartheidfree.ie and it opens up this website for you. This is what it looks like. It's got the map there. You click menu and then sign up, and then big green button that you can't miss. So you click into that and you can see it's essentially everything that's in that sign up sheet. So really important as well. I'm just going to pause this. So you see here, it says required, obviously, to fill it in. This one can trip people up a bit because it looks like it's pre-filled in for you. It's not. You just have to type that exact thing in there. So otherwise, when you go down to the bottom, you have to go right back up to the top. So when you're filling this form out, when it comes to subject, just type in AFZ sign up. And then tick whatever businesses, and anything that says required, obviously fill that in. So there's a few required forms. If they want it sent to a different address, then they can fill it out there. And then details, and then you just press send, and then it gives you that little swirly thing. Originally, there were issues, Soph said to me, with the CAPTCHA. So you have to kind of put in whatever code that they give you on for when you're signing up. It used to be very glitchy, but there has been an update of the website. So this does not seem to be a problem anymore, which is great news. And then we're moving on to, or actually before we move on, any questions so far?
And maybe does anybody know of any schools or preschools that have signed up as an apartheid-free zone? Rona is wondering. I said that anything like that can be seen on the website, but if anyone knows off the top of their heads, maybe.
I know I was talking to, I had a chat with the Teachers for Palestine. So there is work towards it. I don't think there is yet, or if there is, there's a very limited one or two. But I think that brings it back to the different types of AFZs. So if someone is working within a school and they want that to be their target, then that's absolutely kind of a trajectory that you can go down, but not that I'm aware of. But it is definitely something that the Teachers for Palestine are working on. So I will, is there anything else there, Adam?
No.
No, all good. Fabulous. I'll let Neil come back in, and we'll go to our how to improve our success rates.
Okay. So we've got there's quite a few ways to improve success rates, and feel free if you've got any other tips and tricks that you want to add into the chat as well. So some of the things that we use would be trying to point out that many of the alternatives for boycott targets are Irish owned. Customers love that, so businesses should probably want that. Focus on independent business is really important. So chains, franchises, they don't, they're part of the big corporate machine, and they don't make their own choices anyway. So you're wasting your time if you're going into those. So really focus on the independent businesses. Small businesses generally often tend to be more favorable. One good option is go through local Palestine Solidarity Campaign social media accounts to see followers, and see if there are any businesses that follow them or that even post online in, or repost any of their material or like their material, or post things about fundraisers or anything that they're involved in. Develop a routine is really important. So make time for popping into businesses that fits your regular schedule in a way that you can be consistent. So that's kind of important. Well, it's very important really to make sure that you keep on track, because you want to, following up with businesses is important. So you want to kind of be able to commit to doing it within a couple of weeks, and then do it within a couple of weeks, just so that so you kind of strike while the iron is still hot. So and you just have to think about what suits you when you're doing that. Decide on a maximum number of visits per business before putting them down as a de facto declined, right? There's a lot of businesses who will string you along, or you have a really good conversation with the business owner the first time, and then they'll ask you to communicate via email after that, and then you'll keep emailing them for weeks afterwards. So you have to decide when you're putting too much effort into this, and based on the signals that they're sending you that they're probably not interested anymore, or if they decided against it, and then cut them off so you can focus your energies on other opportunities. I would usually say definitely maximum 3 visits per business would be the absolute max I would do. Then update your shared tracker at each step to ensure everyone has visibility. That's really crucial, especially the larger your group. But even once you have a group of 2 or 3, it's really important to make sure that you're not cannibalizing each other's leads, and that you're not duplicating work. It's also important for you, if you're going to a lot of businesses, just to have the details of your conversations tracked, so that you can review it yourself and maybe remind yourself, oh, I said this to this guy, I need to get this piece of information to him. Always have some BDS cards with you, absolutely. And when you pop into a potential business, you could, if you want to go that route, ask if they would like to have some BDS cards, in their window, or if they'd be happy with that. Then if they'd be happy with that, they're likely to be supportive of the cause and maybe want to take the leap to being an AFZ. And ensure you speak to the owner manager. Again, I mentioned that previously. That's absolutely crucial. So speaking to staff and leaving materials or trying to get contact details, they're all something you can do when the manager's not there, but they're really just steps to trying to get to speak to the manager. You are going to need to speak to the owner or manager.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Neil. So these are just photos of our lovely AFZs in Cork. Cork City here, some further out in Cork County as well. So yeah, slowly getting there. We're growing. Top tip would be we try, regarding the social media posts, is that we try not to post all of the photos at once. So the growth of the AFZ is not linear. You're not going to have a consistent, 1 or 2 businesses every day kind of scenario. There will be times when you get loads and you're like, this is brilliant, everyone wants to be an AFZ. And then you'll go through kind of stagnant periods where you feel like you're talking to so many people, but no one's, taking it on board or agreeing. So you want to have, when you are successful, get those photos, but don't post everything all at once. First of all, algorithm wise, it's better to have a steady stream of posts as opposed to like a big photo dump. But also when you are going through those kind of stagnant kind of periods of time, those photos that you can drip feed into your social media are really, really helpful. And it gives that evidence of that kind of just steady movement, because statistically on average, when you divide it out, it's still the same, but it just looks a bit better and it takes the pressure off you as well. When you're like, oh my God, we haven't posted anything for like 9 weeks, what are we going to do? If you have a bank there, you can be smart about it. And also 2 things to keep in mind: business owners talk and social media is powerful. So as this movement grows, and Neil touched on this earlier as well, we're going to be getting to that point where more organic signups are going to happen. So we're going to have businesses approaching us, not us necessarily having to go and, reach out to all of them. And we've even started to see that ourselves happening where, businesses, maybe talk to a friend that also owns a business, and then they come to us and want to sign up, or they see, a few posts online liked by their customers and stuff like that. Then they come to us and want to sign up, because fundamentally what this entire system, this entire movement is about is working towards like a cultural change around like ethical procurement and brand selection, where people are saying, I don't want to just be buying anything. I just don't want to just be, providing any company. I want to be selective about who I have and what I have around me and where my money goes. And so, it's not going to happen overnight, but it's that just kind of slow chipping away at the system that we're, hopefully heading in the right direction. And so to that end, we're always trying to improve. Like, obviously, we're really proud of the system that we've put together, and we've seen it work really well with a lot of people. It's been very helpful. But we also don't want to just kind of say, right, that's it, we've done everything that we can. We're always trying to grow this and get better if possible. And one of the things kind of we noticed when we were doing like our end of year review in 2025 was we felt that we were a little bit kind of maybe reactionary, or we didn't feel like we started our actions early enough, and then we felt like we didn't have as much of an impact as we really wanted. So we sat together and we like discussed and brainstormed, what is it exactly that we wanted to have achieved, you know, by the end of the year. One of those things is having another AFZ webinar, because we saw how well the first one went and we knew there was going to be demand for more. So that was one of the things we really wanted to focus on. Another one is, you know, TAVA, focusing on that, you know, getting that out there and trying to get as many pharmacies as possible to be TAVA last. The AFZ, obviously, major focus for us as well. So we had a brainstorming session. We kind of listed out all of the things that we thought were going to be important for us. And then we selected a limited number of aims, because, you know, we all want to achieve the world, but we have to be realistic what it is exactly that we can achieve with the number that we have and the time that we can give to it. Because, you know, especially, I don't know about anybody else, but within Cork, a lot of our kind of BDS members are also members of other subgroups. So, you know, we can be stretched a little bit thin sometimes. And then after we decided on that kind of most important kind of group of aims, we organized things out evenly throughout the year, so that, you know, we were just chipping away at it and we didn't feel overwhelmed at any particular point of the year. So for an aim to be included, it has to be clearly defined, measurable, and achievable. So kind of think KPI kind of mindset. And so from that, then we put together our calendar. So, you know, we started our planning here. All the green is all of the planning work that has to be done. The yellows are like our soft deadlines, and then the reds are like the action days. Or the hard deadlines that we have to meet. We're all right here in May, so this is another goal that we can tick off our list. We've got a Black Friday event planned, so we're going to start working on that, you know, August to September, and then go to print, and then start advertising. And so, you know, the year is spread out. We've had a chat with the healthcare workers as well, so there might be something happening in July. We're still bouncing back and forth with them regarding that. One of the things that came out of actually that meeting with the healthcare workers, which is I will also be sharing, is we've created, you know, we've got the BDS cards, but we've created TAVA cards as well for doctors to share. And also we had a chat and somebody made a very good observation that a lot of like their parents, so like the doctors would be part of the BDS campaign, and then a lot of their parents who are, you know, elderly, who would have a lot of medications, will be chatting to their friends when they go to mass or they go to like a retirement village or something. That's a cohort that would deal with TAVA a lot potentially. So having something specifically for them that could be a little talking point, and essentially recruiting people to who are interested and who believe in the campaign to be able to do their little part and reducing their barriers to doing their bit for Palestine. So that's another thing that I will share with you in the resources, is the little TAVA card if you want to print that and use that as well. So that's our kind of our next step is, you know, this is now becoming part of our system. Is at the end of the year, we sit down, we review the year that has passed, we assess, have we achieved what we wanted to achieve, or where do we want to go from there? Do we need to kind of be a bit more realistic? Were we too ambitious, or were we just ambitious enough, or do we need to be more ambitious? And just kind of go from there and just keep the momentum going. And so now I'm going to bring in your successes. So I was delighted to receive these photos from the Dunleary apartheid free zone. So they've done excellent work. They were at the Jura's here with us today as well. They were at the first webinar, I believe, and they're part of our AFZ support group on WhatsApp. And so they've set up a BDS stall, and I cannot emphasize enough the importance of a BDS stall, because that's where you're going to get your group of dependable activists that you know are going to show up, rain or shine, that you can plan together and, you know, depend on to be there with you and, you know, divide up the work. So the AFZ is always going to start from the BDS stall. So our AFZ campaign in Cork is, I suppose, a subgroup of the BDS subgroup again. So this is them on Saturdays with their flags and I think the posters and things like that. They also have this, and I love these. They had these totes made. So these serve multiple purposes. First of all, it's a great talking point. Excellent for social media when they're going around and essentially advertising what are the companies that need to be boycotted. So multiple purposes there, but also because they sell them and that brings money into the campaign. And there's lots of things that, you know, you'd be surprised kind of will cost you money, and it does add up. So, you know, printing leaflets and things like that. And, you know, if you need to get things for your table, so the table or flags and things like that. So having a stream of income from something like a tote is a great way to just kind of keep things turning over, keep the books looking good, and, you know, not let finances be a stumbling block or something that stops you from growing and achieving more. So loving these social media posts. And then another thing I wanted to share is great work that they've done at providing alternatives. One thing that was pointed out previously is that it can be a bit negative when all you're doing is pointing out, don't buy this company, don't buy that company, boycott this, boycott that. It's really important to say to people what you can get. So obviously this is kind of straying away a little bit from AFZ, but it's just the fact that, you know, when we were talking about our apartheid-free, not apartheid-free, sorry, our alternative sheets, you already know how to do these things. Do you know what I mean? The research that it took to create these is the exact same research that I did and that we did in creating those leaflets. So it's not rocket science. Everyone's, you know, well able, and you're probably already doing a lot of the things that we've mentioned. It's just about kind of bringing it all together in a reproducible system that everybody's singing off the same hymn sheet, so that it just kind of flows like clockwork for you. So I really love these. I love the color scheme as well. And so that brings us to the end of the webinar, I suppose, a talking part. I'm gonna actually exit from my screen sharing here so I can finally see everyone. Thank God, I was feeling very lonely. And we can have our Q&A if anything hasn't been answered already in the chat. Yeah, just jump in, raise a hand, let us know. Or if you don't want to talk, type it in the chat and we'll go through it, and I'll actually be able to look at it this time. I'm gonna open up the chat there. Fabulous. Anyone? Oh, brilliant. I'll bring in IPSC. Yeah, do you want to unmute yourself? Is that Brona?
Hi, yes, it is.
Hello, how are you?
Yeah, thanks very much for that. It was really good, really engaging and informative, and yeah, fair play. There's no way you'd catch me doing a role play like that. So yeah, fair play to you. Yeah, I suppose around the alternatives, I suppose, do you get much questions about, you know, you're swapping out, say, Coca-Cola, which employs a lot of Irish people, do you get much pushback on that then when you're I suppose giving them an alternative that isn't Irish based, you know, that's not creating jobs? I see there even in Dunleary, you know, Barry's Tea, Lyons Tea, but the alternatives then are there Irish brands? Are we pushing the supporting Irish jobs and economy?
So I personally haven't had much pushback to that, but a lot of the alternatives that we list would be Irish. So, for example, for Coca-Cola, it's not just the red Coca-Cola can, it's also things like Riverrock, right? And so the alternatives to Riverrock will be Ballygown or Ishka. So they're Irish, you know? So for a lot of the time, and things like Tiva, a lot of the alternatives then are Irish tablets, you know, so like Clonmel, for example. So a lot of the alternatives would be Irish businesses. And, you know, ultimately, it's not, I think it would be a reach to say that it's going to affect Irish jobs because it affects the multinational as a whole, as opposed to specifically the Irish jobs. So I don't know about anybody else, but I haven't had that pushback or that concern brought to my attention from businesses that I've approached. Because a lot,
Maybe
again,
it's just,
the stock,
maybe
a
it's
lot
just
of the
the
stock
meat.
is, I know, maybe, but a lot of the
Maybe they're-
stockists you see are Irish. So you'll see now when I send the all of the resources out on the Coca-Cola one specifically, the stockists are all Irish, you know?
Yeah, the stockists, I suppose, but yeah, like I suppose we've got Coca-Cola in Drogheda and in Mayo, and that a lot of, you know, people will talk about jobs. So I suppose what we would say is we don't really offer alternatives, but that we would suggest that you know, because some alternatives, well, and maybe you've done all that research, but you know, are you checking labor laws and, you know, those kind of things? So I
In what
wouldn't want to be
regard
getting
do you mean?
into that with businesses and kind of say, well, you know, that their compromise is kind of their business, but we would advise to shop local and not
Okay.
stock the complicit. But
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Brilliant,
I
thank you.
think Coca-Cola is the tricky one, isn't it? It's the one
Yeah.
that comes up for everybody. And they seem to supply all the fridges as well.
They do, yeah.
In pubs. So it's a huge cost to small businesses. And it's just, yeah, taking that myth away that you have to get rid of Coca-Cola in order to
Exactly. You
become part of
don't,
the fridge.
you know,
Yeah.
and it's all about kind of doing it in a way that, like Neil said, no one's asking you to ruin your business because that's of no use to anyone, you know. It's certainly not going to help Gaza if someone's business goes bust. But it's about assessing what can you achieve safely, financially safely within your business, and doing as much as you can. So yeah, the fridges is definitely something that is a workaround. But again, maybe the step that business can take is providing alternatives so that maybe less people will get the Coca-Cola. So they don't have to cut it cold turkey, but the way that they help is by saying, oh, well, you know, when people come in to buy something, maybe less of them will get Coke. So maybe they're not getting rid of Coke entirely, but instead of, let's say, I don't know, arbitrary figure that they're buying 10 crates of Coke a week, maybe that goes from 10 crates to 8 crates. It's not zero, but it's a hell of a lot better than nothing, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And just to say as well that the Apartheid Free Ireland and IPSC have a WhatsApp group for everyone for the country
Yes,
that's
yeah.
part of the apartheid free zones, and also the Instagram page. So if you do get a sign up or you're putting on a talk or a stall or anything like that, is, you know, place to share information there on WhatsApp and on the Instagram page.
Can I ask, do you want me to share the WhatsApp link with the groups here, with the people here?
Yeah, if people want to just email campaigns@ipsc.ie and I can get back to them. I'll put all the info in the chat. Thank you.
Brilliant. Oh, super. Brilliant. Thank you. Adam, can people hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
Adam, did you press that button by any chance?
What button?
It's trying to sign me out. I'm being sabotaged. No?
Not that I know of.
Not that you know of. What is happening? Oh my God. Okay, well, if you can still see me, then I'm not going to panic. I'm just going to move that window and pretend like it's not there.
Where did Miriam go? So
Oh, good.
I have a question here from Aidan. How have you continued to pursue when you may have been getting constant no results? Our group has been feeling very burnt out lately. Any advice?
I think just be aware that we've all been there. Like, you are not alone in that. And whereas we might be successful this week, you might be successful in 2 weeks' time. It is, yeah, we all get there. I think it's important to also take a step back when you need to take a step back, and give yourself the right to have a breather, and then figure out what is sustainable for you. So maybe if you're going out every single week and you're getting no's, then that's wearing you out. So maybe go every other week and tag team with somebody in your group so that you have a bit of a reprieve. Or maybe it's, do you go not on your own but with someone, so that if you do get a no, it doesn't feel like a direct personal rejection. But yeah, we've all been there. Yeah, and it's tough. I know myself. I stopped going to businesses for a little while because of that exact reason. But just don't take it personally. They're not saying no to you. A lot of the times it might literally just be because they're really busy. And if they don't want to sign up, it is not a personal failing. You're not letting Palestine down because you can't convince a business to sign up to AFZ, because ultimately all we can do is bring it to their attention, reduce the barriers of entry as much as possible. But that is the end of our locus of control. That's the end of our responsibility. Beyond that, it's out of your hands. And so I know it's not easy to do, but try not to let it affect you too much.
Yeah, I'd say sometimes it's good to take a break, take a couple of weeks off. We all have day jobs, and this is we're all doing this out of our own time, so it's tiring. So yeah, sometimes you need to take a little while off, and then I think I think to Miriam's point, it's good to then maybe just take stock and see, is our approach right? Should we, how are we, should we target a different type of business or a different way of targeting businesses? What the things that we're actually saying to businesses and how we're talking to them. Can we improve that, or maybe try a different way and see what works?
%. Yeah. Can you see any other questions, Adam?
No.
No, brilliant. Has everybody had a chance to see the resources that Brona put up in the chat? I can always email everything as well. Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Emma.
Just Owen, that's a great point. If anyone hasn't seen Owen's point to address that question about burnout and not getting constant rejection, or getting constant rejection or not getting results, like that's a really good point. That one AFZ is a huge win. It's actually a systemic change, for a business. If a business reduces their reliance on an Israeli, on Israeli goods or on complicit businesses, and they display, the posters in the window, that impacts everybody that walks into the shop, sees that, and they're affected by that. If it's changing their selection, if they're offering alternatives to Coke, for instance, or something like that, everyone who goes in and out of that business will be impacted in one way. So I think it's important to recognize that, and our success rate is it's pretty low in terms of the amount of businesses we pitch. We pitched, hundreds of businesses. So it's good to adjust your expectations, and think that, you know, most of these businesses are not, most of the businesses you approach are never going to sign up, you know. So invest in the few 10-minute conversations you may need to have with them, and with some it will be only one, but then don't, you know, don't get too, if it's a no, it's a no, move on. But yeah, one win is huge. Yeah, thanks, Owen.
Yeah, 100%. It's much bigger than, it's much more impactful than a consumer boycott in that regard, because one business is going to impact so many consumers. Whereas, you know, if you're going around and talking to your friends, that's a small group of people. Whereas if you convince one business, that's impacting all of their customers. So yeah, don't feel like you have to have a win every day. That's unachievable. No one's achieving that. But you know, don't let it stop you from going out and talking to businesses just because the few that you have talked to have said no. It doesn't mean that the next one is going to say no. Have we any other questions? Anything else people would like to clarify? Or are we all happy? Brilliant. So like I said, we will I will email everyone if I'm energetic enough, it will happen before the weekend, but definitely by Monday. I will have everybody emailed with a link to all of the documents. And then vis-a-vis Bernie's question about Northern Ireland, and then Avida will circle back. And then if people would like to be added to the WhatsApp group, this is our one. Obviously, there's the IPSC AFZ one, which has been linked by Brona in the chat. So if you want to do that, get the info in the chat. But if you want to be linked into our nationwide one, because we all love a group chat, then just email, respond to the email that I sent with your mobile numbers and your name, and then we'll add you into that chat as well. And that will happen as soon as I possibly can, I promise. Am I forgetting anything, Neil, Adam? I think that's everything. Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you so much, everyone. It's lovely to have you all. I hope that you found that helpful. I hope it answered the questions that you had. And look, we're only an email away or a message away if any questions do arise or you need any help. We're more than happy to provide that. All right. Have a good night. And all the best. Thank you all.
Very much.
Thanks all.
Take
Free
care.
Palestine.
Free Palestine. Saoirse the Phalaistín.